Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A videos. I guess video / podcast if you're on YouTube. Links in the description to this content on a bunch of different podcasting platforms, which is a fun way to watch it. If you are on the video, however, you will be seeing, as every week, some team fights.
Right.
And do you wanna let people know what they'll be seeing today?
Well, and the reason why you're seeing these particular fights is this is season 11, the season of the Lost Challenge characters.
Yeah.
So this is where we have been for the last few weeks, for the last 12 episodes, playing with characters who have not had their challenges in the cycles that started repeating from May 2020. So we're talking almost 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only are they difficult to get, but they haven't received any of the attention that we've been giving characters in our weekly recap. So this is our season of reacquainting ourselves with some of these really interesting characters.
For sure.
And this week, it is Hawkgirl, or Hawkgirl Prime as she's known among those who play Injustice, where we talk about characters with multiple skins.
Yeah.
When they don't have a universe, they are Prime. They are from basically the Prime universe.
Mm-hmm. The OG.
Yes, the OG.
Yeah, which is one of those sort of naming schemes that feels pretty arbitrary, right? Because Prime is just whoever gets to pick. It's the same way that you have like Western versus Eastern, and it's just based off of like who drew the maps and where you drew people on the maps. Right,
but you know what? All right, so the funny thing is, though, I know that the nomenclature of Prime came from the players, but I'd have to dig around to find it. But I know that Warner Brothers has, in its official capacity, used the same kind of nomenclature.
Yeah, well, often that is how you do it. It's like Terra Prime or whatever. There's a kind of funny naming scheme thing that's happened. There's this game called Helldivers 2, which I haven't played myself, but I've seen a lot of sort of discussion about. It's sort of this satire of totalitarian propaganda. So it's you play as these Helldivers, and the way it's set up is to make it very clear that you're like expendable as people, right? It's sort of Starship Troopers style, like where you are playing as the fascists, basically. And what's really funny about it is that the home planet of all the Helldivers is just called Super Earth. And it's funny that they just added an entirely unnecessary superlative that doesn't give you any extra information. They just called it, they like if you just started calling it Super Canada one day, like what happened to make it super? It's just supposed to be Earth, but it's not just Earth. It's Super Earth. It's better.
And it's funny to me too, right? Because I mean, in my mind, I never looked it up. I just always assumed that the idea of the planet Earth, there's a connection between the planet being Earth and ground is Earth.
Yeah.
And this is just sort of the place, right? Like you've sort of centered yourself as the universe sort of revolving around you. So it wouldn't surprise me if the aliens we met, that their planet was Earth in their language. Mm-hmm. So to actually like call yourself Super Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Home, something.
So, like there's to me, the perfect example of this is the Inuit. Yeah. Because they call themselves the people. Mm-hmm. That's what Inuit means.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense. They are the people.
Yeah.
Like when you are the world is what you know. Mm-hmm. These are the people in it. We are people, man.
Yeah. That's your name for yourself. That's why we also call it Terra sometimes, right?
Right.
Which I don't know if that's Greek or Latin, but it comes from, obviously it's the same root as terrain, right? Which essentially means the same thing.
Right.
And then you have like Terra Nova, which is like the new world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Yeah, you would assume that if another civilization had some sort of phrase for the planet or the region, like the largest sort of envelope containing themselves, it'd be some variation of home or earth or ground or like,
Because it's to me, it's weird that somebody would ever, like, it feels so inconsistent with reality that somebody would call themselves Super Earth.
Yeah. That's why it's funny, is that it's so clearly like propagandizing, right? You've added a superlative to say we're the best Earth when it doesn't mean anything. It's not useful or helpful.
Okay, and what it's that always having that point of reference. It's the way I don't know why this just popped in my head. It's like World War.
Yeah.
World War One was never known as World War One when it was happening. This was World War. This was the biggest thing that had ever happened. It was
they
a
called
world
it the Great
war.
War often.
Yeah.
But I think some people did call it World War One. I forget what it was. There was some
Before there was
some
World
writing.
War Two?
There was. I forget what it was, but
Wow.
most people didn't. But some people there. It wasn't like there was zero examples of it. It just wasn't the most.
It
common
feels
way
like
of
that
referring to
kind of thing, right? It was the Great War because it was such a big deal. It was not. It was setting its own precedents, and at that point, there was no other point of reference except all the little smaller wars that were less consequential.
And if you think about it, calling it the Great War is not that different from calling it Super War. So you know,
I guess so. I guess so. That is funny. Okay,
but in that case, you are using a meaningful superlative because it's not that it's the only example of war.
Right.
It is that you are saying it is larger compared to
all the other
wars.
ones. So that's what I mean. So if you're going to say Super Earth, there should be other Earths as points of comparison.
Well, then the whole sort of bit with Helldivers is that you are fighting, bug swarms and robot swarms and sort of the surface level propagandizing that is done to you is that like you are fighting the good fight for democracy, and then there are deeper levels of like when you look more into it that you are the bad guy. So like one of the things that I've seen, and it's an interesting story to tell, one of the things I've seen is like one of your missions on like the bug planets is destroying like illegal broadcasts, and if you pay close attention, the information that's going out on those broadcasts is from the people who were previously on the planets before the bugs got wiped out, and they brought in the bugs as like planet control. Like they brought it in to wipe people out, and now you're clearing it out so that they can like colonize it or whatever. So if you look deeper, like you are tools of the oppressor, and you go, oh yeah, I'm destroying like an illegal broadcast, and then you look at it and it's evidence that planet was wiped out and that you brought the bugs in, that the government that you're fighting for is the person who actually made all the problems that you're dealing with now.
All right, so spoiler alert if you haven't read Ender's Game or any of the Ender's World stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like this is when Ender's Game did it and Speaker for the Dead did it the first time, saying, the bugger war.
Yeah.
And that they realized that they were exterminating what was not necessarily a warmongering species, right? That idea, that trope, I guess, has been used so much more, but it felt so fresh and original when I first read that back in, I guess, in the 80s. But it's that same idea, right? Like that there's, I don't know, it's so much, it's part of the cultural shift where, back in the 80s, it was refreshing because colonialism wasn't really recognized as widely as being such a bad thing as it is now.
Yeah. It's not that people weren't talking about it. It's that it wasn't nearly as much of the public consciousness. It wasn't like sort of the same like surface level, like very common sort of conversation.
Yeah, that a lot of people didn't get it. Like you would have to convince people at the time that colonialism was bad, and now it's the opposite, right? Like that it's more widely accepted, and that's the shift. It's not that it's a new idea. Yeah, it's just how likely it would be that when you bumped into somebody that you would be able to have an intelligent conversation where they wouldn't just assume that, the British really should have been doing all that stuff to the other people, right?
And I think sci-fi is actually a great place to deal with those themes of sort of dehumanization.
Yes.
Because instead of sort of leading to that sort of direct metaphor of like racism where you have to deal with like other humans, and even if you make up fake cultures, it's, skin color and all that. When you literally dehumanize something, when you say this is a bug, this is an alien, right? When it is literally not human, you can ask those same kinds of questions about like treating other things as equal, right? And you kind of have that one extra layer, and taking it that one step farther, it might be a little easier actually to dehumanize them. So it's sort of a place where you can take out and look at and examine those feelings that is a lot safer and a lot less directly tied to sort of real world harm of actual people
and your own baggage.
Yeah. And so it lets you sort of give people an experience with it, because I think if you have an alien species in a media property, it is actually pretty easy to dehumanize them as writers, but also it's a lot easier as an audience, right? If they don't look like you. And so you can actually bring somebody on sort of this personal journey of being put in the position of not necessarily a racist, right? Because it's different, but as somebody who views something else as less than. And so you can sort of feed them that perspective, make it a lot easier to sort of stomach and internalize, and then like flip it a little bit, which I think is kind of like an important thing. Like I think understanding your own like shortcomings and blind spots and issues that you can run into.
It gives you the distance to approach those ideas a little bit more comfortably and be more open-minded too, right? So I just want to mention, we used to mention sort of current events in order to ground each of these episodes in the time that we made them, right? Because who knows when you're going to actually watch this or listen to this. But one writer who did such an amazing job with aliens in a way that was actually alien. Like there were a lot of, and when we do aliens, I mean, a lot of it is preconceived notions. A lot of them are humanoid. A lot of them are, I mean, part of it, it's rooted in the way our media is, our TV shows and movies were originally the special effects weren't good enough to really represent alien aliens. Like it's like the difference between Arrival and the original Star Trek series, right? And
you also, it's like where you're culturally rooted too. You end up with a lot of aliens that are more similar to North Americans. It's like North Americans with exactly one twist than they are to like other cultures that currently exist. Like we are more similar to the aliens on Star Trek than we might be to like just people from another country.
Yes.
In everything except for like skin color and like the amount of extra stuff that they put on you.
Right. So to ground it in today, less than a week ago, Werner Vinge passed away.
Oh.
And I don't know who else listening to this would know who Werner Vinge is, but he was a really great writer, award-winning writer. He won the Hugo Award for Best Novel 3 times. And 2 of my favorite alien novels ever.
Was that the ones with like the zones of technology?
The Zones of Thought.
Zones of Thought, that's what they're called.
So it was the award-winning A Fire Upon the Deep and A Deepness in the Sky.
Yeah.
And then he won again in the 2000, I think it was 2006, was for Rainbow's End, which was not related. But some of the, like they were alien in a way that did not presuppose our human assumptions. Like he did them really cool and gave them qualities that were just sort of mind-blowing.
Yeah,
it was just...
I remember one species of alien that was like pack mentality.
Yeah.
And they had like a networked like consciousness, but it wasn't like a hive mind. It was like small networks in the same way that like animal packs might be. And it was a really interesting sort of take on the idea of like collectivism taken to like a biological like networked extreme.
Okay. The one thing I want to point out on why his career and his passing is so significant is, what would it be like to have introduced an idea into culture, into the collective consciousness that feels like so fundamentally basic that most people, if you talk to them about it, would have no idea that this guy created that idea.
Yeah.
The singularity. We talk about the singularity all the time. He was the first person that gave name and thought to the idea.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So I salute Werner Vinge. I am sad at his passing because he's never going to be writing another book.
Yeah.
But I understand that he was suffering from Parkinson's in the last few years. So at some point, I mean, you know, there's the difference between lifespan and health span.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit selfish to have wanted him to be around to do more of what he did. But I hope that there's at least some sort of relief, I guess, and not just sadness in his passing.
Yeah. Okay.
What a brilliant mind, though.
Yeah.
The Singularity and those 2 novels, like if he did absolutely nothing else, that is a huge sort of monument to his life.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's cool stuff. Anyways, we have gotten off track in record time because we didn't even really get to Hawkgirl yet.
Oh, God.
We started talking about Prime universes and stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Hawkgirl. And I just want to peek behind the curtain. We wanted this episode. You said beforehand we should get to more questions.
Yeah, right before I said, we got a bunch of questions. We should really do a lot of answers.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the pre-question housekeeping yet.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so Hawkgirl Prime from the main universe. Her passive is air support, which is Hawkgirl and her teammates can tag in and out more quickly, 4-second faster cooldown. And when Hawkgirl switches out or in, the enemy is snared and cannot switch for 5 seconds. Basic attacks do 100% more basic damage when opponent is snared. She's got 900 attack and 950 health as her base stats.
Right. So this team that you're watching with this gear loadout that has both Red Lantern, Hal Jordan, and Rebirth Raven has a bit of what you'd consider the opposite of synergy. I don't know what the word is. There's a word. There must be a word for that.
Yeah.
But so Red Lantern Hal Jordan, Special 1, which we use a lot because he's got Claw of Horus. He has power right away. Special 1, because you have to wait for him to power back up after you use a special. It's easiest to use a Special 1 repeatedly. Well, it drains power.
Mm-hmm.
So that Rebirth Raven won't get to steal it if you use them in order to retag them in and out. It's less of a problem as long as Hawkgirl isn't knocked out and she serves as sort of the pivot, right? You can decide to shatter, you got her in, and then you can swap somebody out and decide to shatter gears or drain power, but not both.
Mm-hmm. And
it's hard to make that particular exchange between Hal Jordan and Raven work because if he shatters a gear, he's draining power with his Special 1, and you'd think, okay, so you get Electro gears, two pieces of the set.
Mm-hmm.
It will reverse it. They will generate more power, and then you can try to steal it with Rebirth Raven, but that does the same thing. Yeah. So she steals it, but she actually gets it to steal. But then you've given the opponent a bunch, unless you happen to have shattered it down to one LexCore gear, which most of the time you can't manage. So it's a bit of a struggle to make that part work. So you're really kind of screwed if Hawkgirl gets knocked out.
Yeah.
And so that, like, all of a sudden a good team becomes a lot worse. She has 3 abilities, your passive, which was highly unusual for the early challenge characters. And it's easy to forget that she's got so many abilities because, all right, so you got one that's a game changer, a second that's still really useful, and you can do a lot with it in the fight as part of your strategy in terms of planning. Mm-hmm. And in the current meta with Tantu Totem, the third one almost doesn't matter. Yeah. Like 100% isn't doubling it. All it is a boost of 100%. So, it does a little bit more than, say, a basic damage gear that does one of the 3.5-star ones. It does 70% boost, right?
Yeah.
And it only lasts for the few seconds when the opponent is snared. What is it, 5 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not nearly as useful, and I often forget that she even has that ability. But so here's the thing, right? Tagging it out quickly is the single most important ability. If she had nothing else, that would be great. It maximizes the value of Tantu Totem. And basically anything else that requires tagging in and out.
Yeah, the flexibility is just great. Even if you don't have a specific gear that benefits from it,
right,
being able to do what you want when you want with much less of a cooldown is always nice, even if it's not always game-changing.
Right. Locking in the opponent or snaring, it's useful to keep the other team from tagging out. So that means you are not negating completely, but you are limiting the effect of the opponent's Tantu Totem. You're limiting the effects of their tag-in effects like stun, power steal, Batman Ninja Catwoman, right? Yeah. The shield for Injustice 2 Superman. So if you can lock in whoever's in front of you, so let's say you've gotten rid of the shield for Injustice 2 Superman, you lock them in, then you can keep on taking advantage of that. If you shattered Astro Harness, locking them in can be very useful so that you don't have to deal with the invulnerabilities again when they tag in again, right? Basic attack boost as the third ability. In most cases, it's pretty useless. Lasts 5 seconds. In a game where the meta is to focus on specials to do damage. Mm-hmm. So what's funny, right? You look at her stats, that jumps out at you, right? That's evidence that she's one of the early challenge characters with such low stats. It makes it hard for her to be the star on the team, where we're talking about the star being responsible for the most damage, right? Because her damage output is low, even if you choose to augment her. But here's the thing. She doesn't have to have high damage output, given how important her one ability is that makes her probably the most important support character on almost any team.
Yeah, she is. It's what's the turn of phrase? Behind every, like, strong man is a strong woman or something like that? Or is the idea... I know that's, like, relatively outdated now, right? But you know what I'm talking about, right? It was the idea that, like, because women weren't sort of allowed to be in those positions of power, that they were... You would find that they were propping up, like, any man that you saw, like, had a sort of support system that involved his partner or somebody, right, in his life, where she is the person who is standing sort of in the shadows to let other people take the spotlight, but she is still an important part of that team.
Right. And that's why I think she is an S tier character, even if she's not going to be doing the most damage very often, right? So the third gear, so she's got Tinty Toe and Master's Death Card. Her third gear is her Morning Star for the extra chance of stun on special 1 to increase the chance of Rebirth Raven to do stacked stun damage. And so if you're wondering, I mean, we showed you at the beginning, but the gears are Rebirth Raven as Cloak of Destiny, Necron Scythe, and Quake Engine. Red Lantern Hal Jordan, his Enchantress, Companion Gear, Claw of Horus, and Astro Harness, and that's so that he's can leverage his special 1 to shatter all the opponent's gears on his first invulnerability with just 2 quick special 1s. Yeah. And on Hawkgirl, the first iteration we had of this team that we tried was using a power generating gear, specifically Heart of Darkness, instead of the Morning Star, but it didn't really feel like it added much. The number of times that we needed it to get to the second bar of power was not enough. Her special 2, the problem is her special 2 is not ranged enough. So that if you're coming in and you're hoping to do a special 2 right away, because Heart of Darkness gave you the extra power, you still have to wait. Yeah. You have to wait till she closes the distance. Otherwise, you're going to whiff on one or all of her hits, and you're going to waste a bunch of time.
For sure.
All right. So now we're going to get to all the
questions. Question number 1, 22 minutes into our Q&A video, for sure. So this one comes from I Love Risa Sensei again. They say, hey, Beauty Seeker Gaming, recently discovered your channel. Really grateful. I had some couple of questions, which I hope you would answer for me. Hope you all don't mind. I'm sure this question has been asked a couple of times and already been answered, but I tried looking in the channel and couldn't find it, so I thought I would just ask. Anyway, here are the questions. Question number 1. Do we want to stop after each question and do rapid fire? Yeah. Okay. Question number 1. How can I get Arkham Knight Batman without involving microtransactions? Is there a way outside of it, like in an online season reward or any of the store packs purchasable by power credits?
Yeah, I don't consider them microtransactions. You definitely need to get the first copy by paying cash at this point. And then in Phantom Zone and in some of the packs, you can get Arkham Knight Batman once you've unlocked him. And there is... I can't remember if there's one where you get him every time, but there's the Arkham pack that recently came in where there's a chance of getting him.
Yeah. So there we go. Number 2, I just got my first Nth Metal character. How to promote it? The promote button is not interactable, and no info is given about it in the game, as far as I could find at least.
Yeah, so Nth Metal characters are Metal characters are the first ones where you would need multiple copies to promote. Yeah. So the number of copies you need will increase as you go higher in the levels. I can't remember exactly how many. I think you need, 2 or 3 to get the next level. And the kicker is, this is an improvement. When they were first released, I think you needed 44 copies to get to level 7. And now I think it's like 20 something.
Yeah. So it's better, but still not great.
Right. It's not 1-to-1 like every other character for promotion.
And then question number 3, what does Kimota mean? Heard you guys say it at the end of your videos, and they have spelled Kimota Kmoda, which for the way that we pronounce it...
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Kamoda, yeah. It makes total sense, but we are actually saying Kimota, Kimota.
Yeah, all right, so that makes sense too, actually, because the way you hear it, I mean...
Kimota.
Or Komodo, right? Like we changed it subtly, but it sounds close to Komodo Dragon, which is all O's instead of the 2 A's in Komoda. Yeah. Sensei.
And that's from Miracle Man by Alan Moore.
Yeah, originally Marvel Man. Yeah. And it's a really so it's not, to me, it's not only a great story as content. Yeah. But there's a great story behind why it was not available for the longest time. And for anybody who likes that kind of stuff, you really should dig into it. It involves Todd McFarlane, Eclipse Comics, Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore.
Yeah.
A lot of twists and turns. Marvel finally had got the rights to reprint some of them, and I believe, if it hasn't happened already, that Neil Gaiman was finishing some of the Miracle Man stories, like the things that had been started. Absolutely brilliant. It was Alan Moore's sort of deconstruction of the superhero myth, the same way he did a deconstruction with Swamp Thing. Like he has some really interesting ideas.
Well, Watchmen is also kind of a deconstruction of superheroes.
It is.
Yeah.
And he's done it a bunch of different ways, like looking at things that we sort of take for granted in the genre and examining them in a way that I love it when people do this, where they things that should be really obvious.
Yeah.
And then they point them out to you, and it makes me go,
yeah.
Wow, that's really neat. I never saw that right in front of my face.
Yeah, and so it's a kind of nerdy little reference. The joke that we had was, right, we had no way of ending the videos, right? It's just, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time, it's fine. But even that is like a little sort of familiar. And so we wanted to figure out a way of ending the videos. We wanted something that was not super generic and, ideally was like a little bit unique.
So I guess I should explain why that works. Like what the word means in the comic book is.
Yeah.
So Miracle Man was a normal human being. And when he said his magic word.
His activation phrase.
Yeah. He would switch into a superpowered being.
Yeah.
And what was funny actually was that there was Kid Miracle Man and... was it Teen Miracle? I don't know. I can't remember. But their activation phrases were Miracle Man.
Yeah.
But his was Kimota, which was atomic backwards.
Yeah. And so basically the joke is for us, and this is a joke that, has almost lost the comedy value. And now it's just the thing that we say.
Yeah.
But the joke was that we are at the end of our videos turning back into
normal human beings.
Normal people. That we are spending a certain amount of time as Injustice YouTubers.
Right.
And we're going back to our normal form afterwards. So the implication would be that we say Kimota before we start filming, which we don't. But that's sort of
that happened off mic, microphone.
Off camera. Yeah. So that's the implication in the joke. And so it's very nerdy, but we were like, it's comic book related. I think it was because when we first started this channel, and I was like, we should have something at the end.
Yes,
and you were like, I don't know if we really need something at the end. Who cares, right? And I was like, I don't know. I think you should. It just felt like the thing to do.
And at the time, the hardcovers had come out not too long ago.
Yeah, and I had read them for the first time.
I got you to read them. Yeah. Because I've still got issues. I've still got issues from the original Eclipse run. I don't have from Warrior when it was first printed, when the first few issues were black and white in the UK. But I had the Eclipse issues. And I can't remember whether I got you reading some of those or whether I waited until all the hardcovers came out.
But so the important part was that I was like, we should just start saying that. And then you're like, yeah, we can try it.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And then it just felt right. And now it just does feel right. It's nice. It's fun. I think it's a great way. Like the fact that we specifically try to sync up when we say it. And even when we were apart, right?
Right, because there was lag. So at one point, for people who haven't been watching us for years and years, there's one point where you were away at school.
I was getting higher education.
You were getting higher educated. Yeah. And we were not able to do our sort of videos together in person. So we would do it over the internet, and we would use, was it Rabbit? So we'd watch videos at the same time and comment on it. But then there was a necessary lag. So despite that, when we were putting the videos and the audio together during that time, if nothing else was in sync, the Kimota was in sync. Yeah, I would sync that up.
We would sort of do a countdown. We'd say 3, and then you'd say 2, and then I'd say 1, and then we'd try to say start synced up, and then you'd sync that up in the audio file.
Yeah.
Let it be a little bit off, because it's impossible for it to be synced up on both sides. It's just not how it works, right? And then you would sync up the Kimota right at the end.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's the story behind that for whatever.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, but every once in a while it's fun to reminisce.
Yeah. Okay. So in our question extravaganza so far, we've answered 3 questions, but it was exactly one comment for one person. So let's do one more. This one's KeyWiz31. And this is another one going back to sort of our discussion in the previous weeks of making something and the process of making something, and video specifically. Kiwa says, definitely agree with you on the topic of creativity and hobbies. Since I started doing my own Injustice videos, I feel like I'm not only playing the game for my own enjoyment, but it also helps me and pushes me to improve my style of presenting myself, talking, learn new things like Photoshop and Premiere and so on. It added a different perspective to something I enjoyed, and it made me enjoy it even more, so I'm sure I understand what you're talking about. Not sure exactly what that video you made is about. That's why I'm kind of shy to ask for a link, because what if the topic is completely irrelevant to me, but happy to hear that you enjoyed the process. And so Kiwa is referring to the fact that I said you can hit us up at bdckr@hotmail.com and we will shoot you sort of that Patreon exclusive. It's Patreon and friend of the show exclusive, right? So if we recognize your name, like Kiwa, we definitely recognize you, right? Frequent contributor, pillar of the community, right?
There you go.
So if, don't be shy. Shoot us a message. We'll shoot you a link to that. I'd be happy to share it with folks that have shared so much time and space and energy with us. But yeah, so it's nice. I was really happy. We talk sometimes about sort of the ways that people engage with us and what matters. And I was really, really pleased with the fact that we got multiple people who made stuff for whatever size audience they had coming in and saying like, yeah, this really felt right to me. This felt cool to me. It's one of those moments where I sort of, it became a lot more than just the sort of objective number, right? You see how many people watch the video and it's just kind of whatever, right? Like we have a video with like 300,000 views and that's big enough that it's like shocking and cool. But then when you've got videos with like less than like 1,000 views or about 1,000 views, it's easy to just say, yeah, that's just, that's just like the number that it is and not really get a sense of the people in the room with you. Getting a couple of comments from people who like made stuff and said, yeah, this resonated with me, made me really feel each of those people and felt really cool. It felt like, I was saying something that felt true to me and that it hit other people in the right way. And that is kind of that warm fuzzy feeling. That is why we do this, even though we are, compared to almost every other YouTuber very small. So I was really happy to hear people respond. And I guess I don't have anything specific to say, Kiwis, other than like what you're saying here is exactly how I feel about it. You get better, and you get better whether you want to or not. And it gives you a different and richer enjoyment.
Whether you want to or not. I'm picturing somebody getting dragged over to the side of better production. And they're digging their hands and hoping to still make, But
you have to, right? Like, if you make stuff, especially if you care about it at all, unless you have such a deep layer of sort of like irony and ego protective like BS that you like prevent yourself from getting anything out of the experience, you kind of have to like learn how to do it a little bit better, which is nice. But anyways, so just really appreciate the comment. No sort of specific feedback on it other than to say thanks for letting us know. Cool stuff, man.
Appreciate it.
And also shoot us an email. We'll send you that link as long as you want it. Don't be shy. We are not scary or unapproachable in any way. Or at least if we are a very safe place for you to practice pushing through that worry, because I doubt you're going to get, really burned by it. I don't know, unless you're being really mean to us. I don't think we have a sort of history of making people feel bad about just sort of existing and doing their best. Hopefully. If we have, I said, sincerely, we did something really wrong.
It was unintentional. If that happened,
So there we go. I think that brings us to the end of our question extravaganza.
What happened to the comment from your friend, or the shout out that you used to give to your friend? Has that been?
I got too lazy to keep writing new ones, and so it's been semi-retired.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, since we're doing stuff a little differently today.
Might come back. Who knows?
Okay.
So to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon. And you know what? While we're here, thanks to Eliza Caton. It's been a while since I've gotten any sort of IRL patronage from her, but we can give a quick shout out to Eliza. But we'd like to give a huge thank you to Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi127, and Nora Klimek on the credited level, as well as 5x5 on the gratitude tier. And I just realized normally you say it for the Q&As and I say it for the recap.
I can't remember. I didn't realize there was any kind of routine.
I tried to do it that way because I figured for what it was worth, I don't think it actually matters at all. But my thought process was like, maybe somewhere deep in their heart of hearts, they like one of us better than the other.
Oh, that's fun. I like
Right?
that. That's fun.
Maybe they appreciate the thank you from one or the other of us. And if I'm joking about liking us one of us better, because maybe, but who cares? More, it was just that if only one of us was ever the person saying thank you, it would feel one-sided.
Right.
If you're the one thanking the patrons, it's like, what, I don't care about them? Or if I'm the one thanking the patrons every time, it's like, what,
right.
oh, that's the administrative stuff. I don't really care.
I did not realize that's what you were doing.
So I tried to make it so that, we both say it approximately equally.
Okay.
Although I guess when I think about it, people who are patrons are probably slightly more likely to watch the Q&A. Because if you're giving us money, this seems like the more us thing, and the recap, it feels potentially more skippable if you're still playing actively.
Right.
So maybe my math, maybe my balancing wasn't that good, but I do try to balance it. And you do normally say it for the Q&A. So I felt like I was stepping all over your toes, but you didn't even realize the pattern.
No.
So I was kind of managing the back end of that. It turns out. Anyways,
you're the Hawkgirl.
yeah, exactly. I'm S tier, and I'm in your shadow.
There you go.
Okay. Anyways, but a huge thank you to all our patrons. If that's not a good indication that we care and are thinking about you, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Actually, there's probably better ones, but we want you to get your money's worth, because let's be honest, if we're looking at just the stuff that you get. For the stuff that you're giving, I'm not entirely sure the juice is worth a squeeze. I think that
the juice is worth a squeeze.
I think you
didn't make that up, did you?
I've never
heard that expression. Yeah. That's a good one. I like it.
Yeah. So clearly you're tossing us money because you're a fan of us and you want to make us feel good, and not for
we do feel good,
not for what you're personally getting out of it.
Yeah.
Because again, not a great deal for you guys. But we that's why we appreciate it so much. Anyways, huge thank you to our patrons, and a huge thank you to everybody who made it all the way through this video. If you sat down with us for 36 and a half minutes, I've started saying the time now, because it's nice to be a little grateful, to express gratitude.
Yes.
If you've been here with us for more than half an hour, that's cool.
It is.
I appreciate that. You're cool. Yes. I like you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Kimota.